Good evening again, and thank you for coming. My name is Megan Porter. I'm Vice President of the Big Sky Chamber, and I'm here to welcome you to tonight's community information session. Before we get going with the TED and the TIF, I want to talk a little bit about why we're here and how we got here. If you're here, you probably know Big Sky's story, and we're an unincorporated resort community that spans 2 counties, and we're also an economic engine for the state of Montana. And what that means is that we don't always have the same tools or infrastructure that most communities of our size and impact have at their disposal. And yet Big Sky has always found a way to overcome its challenges. It's actually a part of our Big Sky DNA. We don't typically ask someone to solve our challenges for us. We ask for support and the tools that allow us to solve them ourselves. And I think that's something that's really important to think about as we move through tonight's presentation. Because Big Sky is a leader, not only in Montana, but throughout the Mountain West. We have solved, or at least are working on, very complex problems. We have world-class destinations, resorts in this community, while also being a zero wastewater discharge community. Instead, we turn that wastewater into snow. We also, with Cold Smoke, have one of the biggest community housing developments in the country, just to name a few things. With that, leadership also means recognizing when the tools that we have that got us here aren't gonna get us to where we need to go in the future. Our community has grown, our economy has grown, and our infrastructure, the demand on our infrastructure has grown along with it. Yet, it hasn't quite kept pace. And that's what brought us here tonight. And that's also what brought a coalition together that has put together this idea we're gonna talk about tonight. This is not a chamber initiative. It's not a BSRAD or a BSOA initiative. It has been a group effort, a coalition of different organizations, industries, and interests that have sat at the table and asked the question, what does Big Sky need for the next 30, 50, 100 years? And more importantly, what tools do we have to make that possible? And now we have reached an important point in that process. The creation of a targeted economic development district would enable Big Sky to use a tool called Tax Increment Financing. Jackie's gonna go into the details of what all of that means. But what you need to know right now is that this is something that Big Sky cannot entirely do on its own. To move forward, we need the support of the Gallatin and Madison County Commissioners. Ultimately, the creation of this district comes down to a majority vote in both counties. And so, in some ways, we find ourselves doing what Big Sky has done throughout its history. We're not asking for someone else to fix our problems. We're asking for the support to give Big Sky another tool to continue doing what Big Sky does best. Come together, invest in ourselves, and build solutions for our future. Tonight is about understanding that tool. It's about understanding what TED is, what TIF is, and what it isn't, and why this coalition believes it deserves serious consideration for Big Sky. Most importantly, tonight is about you guys and making sure that our community is informed and a part of the conversation. So thank you for showing up tonight. And with that, I'd like to welcome up Jackie Haines, Director of Economic and Strategic Development with the Big Sky Resort Area District.
Thank you so much everyone for being here tonight. As Megan said, my name is Jackie Haines. I'm the Director of Economic and Strategic Initiatives for the Resort Area District. And I just want to frame this discussion, add an additional framework to this discussion for you. So in 2023, the community put together a capital investment plan. It identified over $775 million of infrastructure needs for Big Sky, and $300 million of those dollars were specific to public infrastructure. And so when that was completed, the Resort Tax District hired a firm out of Denver called Economic Planning Systems to do a scope of all of the tools the public finance tools that are available to the nation. What tools do people use to fund infrastructure? And they found essentially that this TED-TIF tool is one of the tools that is available to us by law in Montana, and it's the only tool that we are not yet utilizing in Big Sky. And so that's what we're here to talk to you about tonight. When we identified those needs, we've also been working through prioritizing what needs we as a community are tackling first and what needs we're tackling next. Last year we tackled wellness district funding and the school district, and so we have now prioritized the next level of need. And so the next 3 areas of priority that we've identified are wildfire, transportation, and water, sorry. And so why are we prioritizing those? You know, when we look to the next 50 years of Big Sky, we could all maybe disagree about what the vision of Big Sky is. But what we want to talk about today are why these are prioritized and what the threats to these infrastructures are. Underwater right now, we know that the DEQ has classified Gallatin River as impaired. And so we know that the canyon is putting a lot of nutrients into the river. And we also know that the Firelight Water Sewer District is now standing to threaten the water supply of Big Sky. And so this has really moved to the top of a priority list in terms of infrastructure investment. We also know transportation. We all have experienced the one way in, one way out of Big Sky. What we maybe don't say is the 191-64 corridor is actually busier than I-15. During the peak seasons, that road carries over 20,000 vehicles a day. And we know that maintaining that road is really important because it's carrying a labor force that is increasingly regional. It's carrying a lot of tourists accessing that road, and it's an important evacuation route for Big Sky. And then we also know wildfire is an important thing that we're thinking about as a community. So Big Sky has a wildfire risk that's 96% higher than other US communities, but the community also has a 96% higher chance of structures burning than other US communities just because of where the community is located. We haven't had a major wildfire in over 100 years, so we have a century of fuel buildup. And then one of the ways that we talk about this with our state legislators is that the taxable value of Big Sky is now equal to Bozeman, Billings, and Missoula combined. So if Big Sky were to burn down tomorrow, it would be the equivalent of losing those 3 cities. And so that's why a state legislator from Ekalaka, I was trying to work that word into my presentations as much as I can, should care about what's going on in Big Sky. When you further, I liken it to an investment, right? When you further increase your investment in one area, you want to think about how to de-risk that investment. And so let's think about how to de-risk the wildfire risk in Big Sky. And then tangentially, we also know this impacts insurability and insurance rates. And insurance is really actively looking at things that are going into wildfire mitigation, et cetera, when they are calculating rates. So we believe that investing in these 3 areas will help to build resiliency into Big Sky. It's going to help to protect our property tax base, which is such an important economic driver for the region. It's going to help to protect against some of these risks, and so building resiliency is important. And so some of the ways that we have identified building that resiliency are these specific projects that we'll talk through. Many of you are well aware of the efforts in the canyon to get a central water sewer system into that canyon and take those legacy septic systems off of the river, off of their impacts, and connect them to a central system. We also know that Firelight is a really important system to fix right now. And then to be able to connect those 2 systems to the central Big Sky Water Sewer District system, they are going to have to move into a phase 2 of their wastewater recovery facility. And so to be able to expand that way. And then lastly, Big Sky, as we know, is one of if not the largest, zero discharge community in Montana. And so Big Sky's always looking for outlets to put our high-class treated effluent into places. I have identified snowmaking as one of those things. So snowmaking is a great way to do disposal, but it's also an awesome way to build resiliency into the economy. The resort tax collections this year did not experience a decline, but simply because we were the best of the worst of the winters. And so the snowmaking helps to build resiliency into those high tourism seasons. And it returns the water into the ecosystem in the way that Mother Nature intended. It creates a slower snow melt in the spring, and it has great positive impacts on the river, contributing to higher water flows and colder water flows, which has great downstream impacts to the ag economy with our neighbors in Gallatin Valley. Then transit and transportation. Some of you may know that the Resort Tax District purchased that corner parcel down across from the Conoco with the intention and the continuation of working in partnership with MDT to improve the intersection. That intersection, we've probably all sat in it. It backs all the way up to Ace. And so that intersection has been identified by MDT for improvements. And then MT64 is actually classified as an auxiliary route, which means that it terminates, it doesn't connect anywhere. And so because of that classification, MT64 doesn't qualify for the same capital investment from the feds that other roads would. And so we're constantly looking for dollars to be able to support the capital improvements along that road. And then continued ongoing investments in public transit is important. I think EDS published an article that was saying Skyline was seeing some of the highest ridership rates they've ever seen. And so ongoing support of public transit is important. And then just continued work to ensure that Jack Creek Road is a safe secondary egress route. And then lastly, projects around wildfire. We have seen great success with the AI pano cameras. The fire district just got a third one set up, and now they can triangulate fire starts within a couple of feet, which is amazing. It enables them to respond really well. We want to continue to look at ongoing technology investments in this area. There's been a lot of great advancements in this industry, including drones that are carrying fire retardant and can be dispatched to put out wildfire, thermal imaging, etc. And then ongoing support for different fire stations. We know fire stations are important to different ISO ratings. And then we also have seen snowmaking actually be used by some of our fellow peer cities as a response to wildfire. So an example of that is Lake Tahoe. I think it was in 21 was their fire. The Heavenly Ski Resort was able to use their snowmaking guns to protect all of the property and outbuildings for their resort. And so, as I mentioned earlier, TED-TIF is one of the tools that's available to us in Montana that we have not utilized yet. And so this is where we get to the technical piece of the presentation. The TED stands for the Targeted Economic Development District. And so think about that. It's a district that lists what the funds are eligible to be spent on. So you can think about that. It's very similar to the resort district, right? So you have a boundary that you draw. Then the TIF mechanism, the Tax Increment Financing, is the financing mechanism that is very similar to the sales tax that the resort tax, right? And so you have our resort tax boundary and the resort tax itself. This is the TED boundary, and then the TIF is the enabling mechanism there, or the financing mechanism. And so the way that this mechanism works, high level, is it does not add any new taxes to the property tax owner. What it does is after the taxes are collected, it reallocates where that dollar goes. And so the local government jurisdiction is the county commissioners are the powers to approve this district. It's not voter approved. because it's not adding any new taxes to your tax bill. It is county commissioner approved because it does impact their budget. And the way that that works is the county commissioners say, okay, what we received in 2026, we agree to receive for the life of this district. And in Montana, that is 15 years. And then, as natural appreciation occurs within the district that you draw, you pay more in taxes as that appreciation occurs, and then say your neighbor builds a home, and they start paying property taxes on their new home. As that growth occurs above and beyond the 2026 level, that's what's called the increment. And that increment gets set aside and gets reinvested back into the district, into these specified infrastructure projects. And so the life of this district happens 15 years. In Montana state law, you can extend it by bonding. But our goal is to keep this district as short as we possibly can. We just want to be able to invest in these infrastructure projects. Also, what we'd like to do is we'd like to create a district on the Gallatin side and one on the Madison side and have them work together, because the infrastructure doesn't stop when it hits the county line. It connects. And so we'd like to have two districts that touch up against each other and work together to accomplish these projects. Typically, these districts are done in what economic developers called greenfield, so just raw land that doesn't have infrastructure in it. And so one example of where you would see a TED district is where Bridger Brewing is, out in Three Forks. That's technically in Broadwater County, and they created that, and they're putting in a water sewer system with that infrastructure money there. Big Sky is a little different because it's not raw land, that we're doing. And so part of what the difference is raw land, when you have something happen to it, it doesn't stand to lose a lot of value because it doesn't have a lot of value in it. You haven't invested into the infrastructure, into the property. But Big Sky is different because we have a lot of taxable value here. And so we believe that investing in that infrastructure will help to really protect the taxable value of Big Sky and protect the economy. And so why now? Why are we looking at this now? Well, we can look to some of our peer communities and see how infrastructure investment could have prevented and staved off some of these things that they faced. A perfect analogy is the Teton Pass road collapse in Wyoming. That road is a one-way in, one-way out road to Jackson. It's transporting their labor force, and the state of Wyoming knew that that road needed investment, and they weren't investing in it, and that road collapsed. An economist out of Jackson estimated that that was a $600,000 a day economic impact. And when I look at 191 and just do preliminary numbers, looking at traffic data, if the road collapsed between here and Four Corners, my estimates range from $1 million to $1.7 million a day in economic impact, and that range is there because traffic changes in August versus February. And so I think we would easily double that. It took Wyoming a year to rebuild that road. It was wild doing a little bit of research for this, going and seeing all the different commuter buses that they had to put up, and workforce couldn't even get hotels in Jackson after that because it added many hours onto people's commutes. And then another similar but not perfectly analogous example is the Camp Fire in Paradise, California. That fire went through, it was one of the biggest wildfires that California had seen. They saw 64% decrease in the market values of their property, a huge outmigration of population, and 8 years later, they still have not recovered to the level that their economy was at before that fire. And so we really believe that this tool will enable us to invest in infrastructure that will help to set up the next 50 years of Big Sky. Not only does it help us catch up to the growth that Big Sky has experienced, but it really is going to build infrastructure that will support the community into the future. So I'm going to pause there. We're going to take some questions. We have we just have experts that are going to come up and be on a panel, and as we take questions from the audience, we'll direct to the appropriate person. So if my panelists could come up and join me on the stage, I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we'll take questions from the audience. We have plenty of time for questions. We really wanted this to be conversational. We wanted people to feel like they had the opportunity to ask their questions, so don't hesitate. I'm going to let Al, will you introduce yourself, what you do, why you're here, and then pass it down the line?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Al Malinowski, and I'm the local basketball coach. That's why I'm here. As well as being the local basketball coach, I've served on the Big Sky Water and Sewer District. I'm just starting my second 4-year term on the district. In the past, I have served 2 terms on the BSRAD district, back when we had a whopping $2 million to spend, and have served in other capacities in the community. I work in real estate development, and I'm married and have 3 kids that are growing up in Big Sky.
Hello, I'm Dylan Pipinich. I'm a community planner with WGM Group. I kind of cut my teeth as a community planner in Butte Silver Bow as a public sector planner, and we do a lot of tax increment financing in TED districts there. So I'm kind of here as a resource of how they work and what they do, and more of that technical aspect.
Hello, I'm Byron Dominic. I am the chairman of the Big Sky Transportation District. I'm just serving in my 3rd term on the board. I've been, I think, on the board for 11 years. I've been working in real estate development here for the last 13 years.
Hi, my name is Jeff Bolton. I'm the interim fire chief for the Big Sky Fire Department. I've been in the fire service for almost 19 years now. Started in early 2007 and have served my whole fire career in Gallatin Valley.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have a second mic, so what I'm going to do is take questions. I'll repeat them into the mic, and then I will hand the mic off to the appropriate person to answer the question. Does that work for videographer? Okay. Who wants to kick us off? Oh, I see a hand. All right, let's hear it. What is the current carrying capacity of the water sewer district, and what I lost the second half of that. And what will it be with the new one? The new phase 2 is what I'm assuming.
Sure, I can confidently answer that in terms of SFEs or single family equivalents. Phase 1, which was completed several years ago, it's been operating for a short time now, has the capacity of roughly 11,000 SFEs or single family equivalents. Phase 2 would add an additional roughly 7,400, so 2/3 more than what we currently have. And I think what's important to know about that is the current 11,000 SFEs meet all of the district's current obligations in the community. So we could do nothing. We could not build phase 2, but that means we can't bring anything on other than what we're already committed to. And as a district, we've talked in great detail about the need to look beyond just what our current capacity is and what our current obligations are, and to be able to help service the community. You should also know that what we're treating water to currently is far superior than anywhere else in the state of Montana. Generally speaking, since we've opened the plant, we've been able to produce reuse water that has less than 2 parts per million of nitrogen. In fact, I think I can say this, in a recent conversation with DEQ, it was mentioned that the water we produce at the facility is cleaner than most of the lakes in Montana. So that's why I think it's important that we as a community look to utilize that resource that we have available to us and expand its ability to service the community. I see another hand over here.
Great answer. And yet that whole system you described was met with all kind of political resistance, legal resistance, time in court, money spent. What do we learn from that to avoid going forward, or to recognize we need the political support to be able to address those kind of issues? You're operating a standard that is beyond anything being done anywhere else, and yet it was used as a football that delayed it for another decade.
Well
So
said.
What do we learn from that?
Yeah, the summary of the question is, what have we learned from the experience we've gone through, that we've been very successful from a science standpoint of generating high quality reuse. In fact, we're establishing the standard in Montana for A1 reuse. But how do we learn to maybe in the future overcome some of the political challenges or the legal challenges that we've dealt with? And specifically to your point, the district has spent over $4 million over the last several years defending the reuse philosophy that we have as a community. I like to refer to that as a community value that we have. I think we continue, especially in this next phase, to try and involve some of the entities that we can have reasonable discussions with to try to move forward. But I understand what you're saying, and it's a big challenge. So I think we're learning on a daily basis how to deal with that, but we can't necessarily predict the challenges in every case that we're going to find. I don't know that I answered your question very well, but you're pointing out a realistic challenge that we continue to deal with, not just as a district, but as a community with this value that we do have.
Jackie, if I understood correctly from one of your earlier charts, we would fix the property tax base. If I understand correctly from one of your earlier charts, the 2026 property tax base gets fixed and the incremental parts gets used. What if the value of the tax base goes down in the future and not up?
Great question. If the value of the tax base goes down in the future, you simply don't accrue an increment. And so it just takes longer to start to accrue that tan white triangle.
So it's a fixed amount of money, and so if the
It's a
tax
fixed
base goes
taxable
up,
value
it's
base.
taxable
Yes,
value.
correct. Yep. So if that does decrease, the increment doesn't grow.
Our property taxes have gone up quite a bit over the past 2 or 3 years. How much of that comes back to the community and how much goes to the state that taxes us?
Is that question about your current taxes, or is it about after this gets enacted? I don't know the specific percentages off the top of my head. John, do you know that off the top of your head? What percent goes to the state and what percent goes to the county? I have an old number, but he has a computer.
I have my spreadsheet up just in case. If you're on the Madison County portion of Big Sky, roughly 55 to 65% of your taxes go to the state, your property taxes. On the Gallatin side, it's closer to about 20%. That's currently, so it's not a small number.
Yep.
What stays in the county, John?
What stays in the county?
Or what comes back to us?
Do you have the split for the Gallatin side? Do you have the split of what's local and then what's countywide?
Can you give me some time to try to answer that
Give
question?
John
I'll try to
5
answer it
minutes. He's a
honestly.
whiz bang
Just
at
give me a
Excel.
second.
We'll revisit that question. Did I see a hand over here? Okay.
How would the district be run? Would it be like the other districts where there are like 5 members from the community?
Good question. How are the districts run? So right now, there's a few things. The approval of the TED requires 2 technical documents to be developed. The first is an infrastructure deficiency report, which identifies all of the infrastructure in Big Sky and the areas it is deficient in. And that is used as the motivation for the creation of the TED, because that is designed to address those infrastructure deficiencies. The second document you develop is something called a comprehensive development plan. And that plan guides the usage of those dollars. So it says, okay, these are the priority areas for reinvestment of those dollars. And then, you know, if you need to update that, here's how you update it, all of that. And then in addition to that, so that plan is sort of your roadmap for how those dollars are used. In addition to that, there's something called a TED advisory board. And so the county commissioners appoint that TED advisory board. And we are recommending to the county commissioners that advisory board be a board of 7 and have different representation on it. Like, for example, a county commissioner from each county that serves the district, and then a fire department representative, and et cetera, et cetera. I could probably get what the remainder of those are. And then that TED advisory board each year talks through what projects they want to target for investment, and that recommendation goes before the county commissioners, and the county commissioners have the final say for the projects that these dollars then are invested in each year.
Oh, thank you. I have 2 questions. The first, we tried this a couple years ago, I believe, and the county shut it down. So the question was why, and how can we expect a different result this time? I can't remember my second. Oh, second question. Is this a one and done? I know you said you could extend it, but do we do this for 15 years? Can we do another one for, say, housing or another project after 15 years?
All right, so first question. The requests on either side of the county look a little, historically, they look a little different. Historically, 2 years ago, just the Canyon Water Sewer District was working with the Gallatin County to request the TED. And so this is different because this is a community-wide coalition with broader need to it than just the Canyon. So there's more community-wide projects. On the Madison County portion, that request was made, and so again, that was a more narrow request that was made to Madison County. And it's in a similar way, this is now a more broad community coalition with broader projects to it. Also, on the Madison side, we prioritized the sorting out the hospital district and the school district. And so that sort of rose to the top of the priority list, and the TED kind of fell second. And so now that that has been solved, the TED is then rising to the top again. And we believe that it's different this time because we have broader community support and broader, really community-wide projects that are part of each of these.
Who do you think will be leading that at the county? Is it resort tax? Is it?
The question is who's leading that with the county. We're really trying to lead it as a coalition. We're really trying to put forward this to the counties as a group. We were in Madison County last week, and WGM was with us, the Housing Trust was with us, and every time we're talking with them, we're making sure that we're communicating that this is a community-wide need. And then to answer your second question, can you just repeat that?
Yeah, the second question was, is this a one and done effort, or can you do an additional targeted economic development district? As far as is statute related, there's enabling legislation that a local government can establish one of these districts. In this case here, that local government is the county commissions. And the only real rule is that you can't have overlapping districts. So you can have a district for 15 years, you can extend it if you bond, and if there's still other infrastructure deficiencies, you can go through the same process legally to create another district. So, like I said, I've learned most of my tax increment financing from Butte Silver Bow, and I think we have 6 or 7 districts We've created one, sunsetted it, and created another one. And then in other areas where there's no more infrastructure deficiencies, we've sunset it and stopped it. It just depends on the projects that are left and if it's still a good working tool at that time.
Two questions and they're very different. The first one is, you mentioned the school and the hospital district. Neither of those things were without a lot of controversy as it related to trying to get cooperation between people who live on this side of the mountain in Madison County that represents us. What gives you confidence that they're not going to be even in a larger position of power to do what serves them, but not the greater Big Sky community, which they've not really shown a lot of willingness to participate voluntarily with going forward? What's changing?
Great question. A few things. One, the disentangling of the hospital districts and the school districts, I believe, has actually given a lot of clarity around that. When we went and met with the Madison County Commissioners, we said that the Madison Valley Hospital mills will be excluded. And so what we're doing is making sure that we're really like leaving that out of it, leaving them alone, right? We're not as entangled now. But in addition, the Madison County Commissioners have been very willing to engage with us on this topic, and we've been having really good conversations with them. And so we would like in good faith to continue forward into those conversations.
But just to be clear, we paid them off. They won a financial disentanglement, and now you're creating more funds that they ultimately are going to also have a position of power to administer. How does that change going forward?
Well, if they approve this, I mean, they do retain the ultimate power for the final decisions, but that's why we want to create an advisory board that's really inclusive of them and comprehensive of the representation that's within the district. And so, you know, all we can do is just show up to be a good partner and try to work collaboratively with them, and continue to keep lines of discussion open.
I like to have faith too, but sometimes past is prologue. My second question is, there was if we can remember, there was like a 5.5 trillion, I know that's a small number today, federal infrastructure bill that was passed in early 20s under previous administration. It's 2020, post 2024, we even have more Montana influence. I mean, Daines ran their re-election campaign. I know he's moving out on. But you would think that Montana's in a very good and very important position. What percent did we get of previous federal funding on infrastructure per capita prior to 2023 or 4, whenever that bill passed, to post? Are we seeing an increase in investment in Montana, or did we not get anything for this $5 trillion bill that went federally that I'm not sure if I've heard of one project in Montana that is being now funded out of that fund that we helped elect? Any math on what Montana's getting now post that bill?
I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the totality of those federal dollars into Montana. And I can't speak knowledgeably on that. I don't know if no one's jumping up here.
Is that not a source of potential relief on things like highway infrastructure?
I mean,
and water?
you know, to kind of touch on that, MDT applied to 2 different rounds of it's called BRIC, but it's a road infrastructure dollars, some from that appropriations, for specifically 40191, and did not receive those dollars from the feds. So those are 2 grant cycles that I know about that were funded from that infrastructure package, and MDT didn't receive that. I don't know if MDT received that in other places in Montana or not. Yeah, lots of shoulder shrugs. That's a great question. You've stumped us. You stumped all of us involve local government
I'm
people.
not happy to have stumped the
Oh,
band.
Dylan might have something.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to both. I don't have the numbers of what we've got from a federal funding perspective. What I can say is that coming from experience, when you're coming with large infrastructure projects or civil type design projects, that those teams usually do a pretty good job of applying for grant funding in any fashion and means possible. Grant funding is hard in general to receive for infrastructure projects. And that's why tools like TIF make some sense, because it's not a competitive grant funding cycle. That money is put aside, exists there for a reason, and you don't necessarily have to compete for it, except for an advisory board. And to speak to your first question a little bit, I had something I was going to say. I can't remember what your first question was. Oh yeah,
the cooperation between us and Madison.
Yeah, that is the reason for a comprehensive development plan. So the community adopts this guiding document that says these are the infrastructure deficiencies and this is what the money's going to be spent on. So it's kind of agreed to some extent prior to the creation of the district, or when you're creating the district. It's like, we're targeting this money for these reasons here. So it creates sideboards from anybody going rogue to spend money on something else, and that's why you leave in the plan. You leave the ability to change the plan, because you don't really know what your needs are going to be in 15 years fully right now. But that guiding document is, that advisory committee. That's what they're looking at. And every time a project comes, does it meet our goals and objectives of what we're supposed to be doing here, so you can keep the boat steered in the right direction. But yeah, I hope that answers both of your questions, but it is really hard to rely on grant funding for infrastructure projects because it's just not reliable.
It's political.
I just wanted to add, I think over the years I've been in Big Sky, I feel like in so many issues we've felt like I feel you're feeling right now, that frustration and why, how do we get this done, and how do we overcome these challenges. And yet one of the things why I think we can be seen as a leading community is we end up figuring it out. And that's some of what we're trying to do today, is share these thoughts. In fact, having questions like yours are incredibly helpful for us as we have these discussions. Even though it may not feel like we're giving you all the answers, it's helping us to get to that point. So I appreciate the thoughts you're putting out there, but I also see it as part of the process. As a community, we've done before to get resort tax in our community and to get the school district separated. And so the stage we're at is part of the process. And so these kind of questions are what we need, but also understand that we're going to keep working toward coming to a solution. And as often as we can, create synergies with other entities so we're working together instead of, like your first question, having a fight for what we're trying to do. So I just wanted to add that thought.
Hi, I have a question. We are talking a lot about districts, and we're talking about Gallatin County, we're talking about Madison County, and what is the boundary of this proposed TED district? And we're talking about counties where we're talking about counties aligning and working together to put funds into a district, which is, I guess I'm curious what the boundaries are and how everybody plays a part in those decision making.
Great question. Do you want to take this? Okay. The only thing I'll preface is keep in mind these are proposed districts, and they're what we are proposing as a district to the county commissioners, so still up for negotiation, but we're going to talk about our proposed district.
Yeah, I don't think we have a map to show, but generally speaking, on the Gallatin side, it's the canyon, it's up the highway, up to the county line where the resort is, through Meadow Village and Town Center. And then on the Madison side, it is, the resort and Moonlight Basin, and it's does not include the Yellowstone Club, where the boundary sits now. And the reason for the best way I can explain of where to pick the boundary is where the infrastructure projects are, where you plan on investing the money. So the money has to come from where it's going to be spent by state statute. So we drew a proposed boundary that I'm sure will evolve and change, but it's kind of outlines where those three types of infrastructure projects are located.
And then I think Jay-Z has our updated numbers. So we're returning to the question about currently where your property taxes go and in what percentage goes where on.
I even made pie charts.
He's fast with Excel, everyone.
Apparently not with the mic. On the Madison County side, 55% of your property tax bill goes to the state, 27% goes to the county, and 18% goes to local jurisdictions. So, and that includes, I think, the Ennis School District on that side and the fire district. On the Gallatin County side, 33% goes to the state, 50% goes to the county, and 17% stays local. And so when you go on the Department of Revenue website and study how these mix of taxes, there's nobody else that behaves like us except Carter County. It's fascinating. We're not like anybody else, and the reason for that is that it's a low population and there are pipelines that go through Carter County, so it's very, very high tax base with low population. But those are the numbers.
How's that decided?
The distribution of taxes. I believe the state legislature and the Constitution and decades of precedent.
Yeah, just to repeat the question, how is that decided? And John's some of it is the state constitution, some of it is the state legislature, some of it is the voters when they vote in local mills and approve local mills, and then some of it is the county too, as they adjust their budget, those mills adjust.
I think for Big Sky, what's unique is that we have such a massive tax base. There is a fixed percentage that goes to the state. So when your house appreciates in value, your state taxes grow with that, no matter the need for the service. It's 9.5% of your taxable value. And that has stayed that way, I believe, since 1989. And so I think that's a cause for just discussion for us. Those are school equalization mills at the state. It's interesting, 10 years ago, that roughly 10% generated about $7 million for the state of Montana, and this last year it generated $70 million. And when we think about local schools, a local school's budget is determined primarily based on enrollment. So take the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we had about 300 to 350 kids in the Big Sky School District. 10 years later, we got 300 to 350 kids in the Big Sky School District. Meanwhile, our state contribution has gone up 10x. So I think that's worthy of noting.
Those local numbers are actually pretty similar. It's the swing between the state and county that's dramatically different.
All right, I saw a question on this side.
So what kind of dollars are we talking about here? Is there a projection through the next 10, 15 years for this in terms of making some assumptions?
So we have hired a third-party firm out of Denver to run those financial projections. And right now, they're projecting across both districts about $100 million, with 60% of that coming from Gallatin and 40% of that coming from Madison. And that's over the 15-year period. And that is tied to the boundary. So if the boundary changes, those estimates change. And it's also tied to a whole string of assumptions of growth, but that's the simple answer.
Is there a plan for all that, for the fire, water, road, like an economic development plan, or is it
Yes, so the question is there a plan for that? And that plan is contained in the comprehensive development plan and the projects laid out in there. I'm gonna hand it over to Dylan to kind of elaborate if you'd like.
Yeah, and as Jackie kind of stated to begin with, is you had a capital improvements plan, you know, like 3 or 4 years ago, and you've been working through the projects there. I think there's $300 million worth of like physical public works projects in there, and some of them have been completed. But yeah, as far as the infrastructure deficiencies go, the $100 million isn't even gonna come close to doing what is from an infrastructure deficiency is out there. And that's, tax increment financing is never meant to be the whole pie on a project. You know, you have people that lever dollars, grant funding, if it's a good match for grant funding. Private development still pays what they need to pay for their impacts to public systems. It's money targeted for public infrastructure, and it's a catalyst type of infrastructure investment.
Back on some numbers, it's been my experience that whenever you receive a federal grant or you apply for one for an infrastructure project, the feds typically put up 50%. And then it's the communities that have to pull together that other 50% to invest. Has that been your experience?
As I said, I'm on the transportation district, and majority of our funding comes from the feds, and it also comes with that local matching grant. So we actually, about 40% of our funding right now comes from the resort tax that we use as matching grant for federal funding. But as we start our 5-year strategic plan is to double our capacity over the next 5 years, which is going to require significant capital over and above the operating budgets with the feds. So this increment funding would be really helpful in terms of acquiring additional buses, creating bus stops along the highway so it's easier for people to get on and off. For us, we see public transportation as the most cost-effective way to increase the capacity of Highway 191. I mean, replacing a bridge on 191 costs tens of millions of dollars. Doubling our capacity and getting several hundred cars off the road is going to be a lot cheaper. And be more effective in terms of creating that. So using some of this increment financing to get some of these bus stops built, increase the bus capital side of rolling stock will go a long way, and having local funds to match the federal available funds would be really helpful.
One other thing, do we foresee any club expansion pressuring our systems we currently have, or are we going to be isolated from that? As the clubs expand and more resort capacity comes online, will there be increased pressure on these districts that we're proposing?
Are they in the current SFEs? Is basically, I think, where you're going.
Specifically with water or in general?
Well, in general, obviously, there's going to be more pressure on roads and the potential for fire wildland mitigation. But as far as our sewer systems, our water.
No on sewer, yes on fire, yes on transportation.
There you go.
Also, there was a question earlier related to additional funding sources. This is the only thing. Resort tax will continue to be a backstop in the community. We just need more partners.
So for the recording, I was gonna grab the mic, and you beat me to it. The resort tax will serve as additional local match for and as a backstop for matching funds for federal and state dollars. And again, for the recording, the question is, if the YC grows, if the clubs grow, does that put additional pressure on systems? It's no to the water sewer district.
Primarily because most of the growth is going to be happening up at Boone Lake.
Except for employee housing, which is in the canyon, which benefits clubs greatly. I'd say all three.
So Okay, so specifically water sewer district, the growth, if Moonlight grows, it does not impact the water sewer district
Because they have their own.
because they have their own system. If the canyon grows because of workforce housing, then it was going to impact the canyon, which is why we want to get it on central system, so workforce housing can go in there and not on a septic that is contributing to the river. Transportation, yes, it does put more traffic on the roads. And wildfire, yes, it creates more boundary, that more homes we have to protect in that wildland urban interface.
Primarily the TIF is funding public infrastructure, not development projects.
Correct, and just to reiterate, the TIF dollars fund public infrastructure, not private development, not private projects.
Since we have the fire chief up there, and he's just sitting here, could you talk about what are some of the ideas? I mean, this is very concerning to us when we see the percentage chance of having a severe fire here. What kinds of things can you change if we do get this money? And what happens if we don't get this money?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think from the capital side of things with this particular TIF district, I think there's some opportunities, and we've gone through a couple different ideas, right? I think the best way to answer that is early notification. And ultimately we have three, like we talked about earlier, we have 3 different cameras that are up and we utilize those a lot. I think there's some other opportunities with placing resources in specific areas, as well as there's a lot of new technology out there with drone capabilities. But a lot of that is going to be the early notification. And ultimately that's going to be the biggest driver for us, because from the operation side, it's not going to be a huge operational benefit from a staffing standpoint. So I think the technology side of that.
Well, as a follow-up, so are you talking about investing in drones? Or are we talking about investing in snowmaking guns that could be going different directions, additional trucks, additional stations?
Yep, and I think that's part of the conversation is additional stations. Again, the challenge with that is the manpower portion of that. I think there's some opportunities with protecting critical infrastructure on the resort itself in other areas with those snowmaking devices. In addition, having the opportunity for us to be able to connect to those and those types of events. And yes, there are some different companies in this area that are looking at drones right now. Again, we're in a financial situation right now where we don't have the ability to do that at this point in time, as far as the technology side of that goes. But to answer that question, yes, there are entities here looking at those right now currently.
My other question, I just want to follow up on that, thank you very much, was just kind of the general timeline of all of this. So we need a yes vote from the county commissioners. We've got to get our target economic development plan. Is this a couple-year project? Realistically, is this? So maybe hit some of the major milestones.
Yep.
And the expected timeline.
Great question. Right now, we are putting together the technical documents that we would like to give to the county commissioners in September. We would like to do a public presentation to the county commissioners at the Joint County Commission meeting on October 7th. And then the rest of that is us working with the county commissioners on their timeline. So to approve it, they have to hold a public hearing, and then they go to vote at their commission meeting. And so we're really hoping to be able to continue these conversations up until, we're sort of targeting this winter, November-ish. We're hoping that the county commissioners would be willing to entertain a vote for this. And I see there's a question.
Did you entertain a vote? How quickly is it?
So the TED then you establish the base year, the TED gets created, and then you have a little bit of a lag period where you wait for this increment to build. And you need that increment to build to then be able to invest in the infrastructure projects. So I see a question here, and then I know there's one over there. So
yeah,
I see you.
My question is, you said that it had to be voted on by the commissioners, and then does it have to go to a public vote also?
No, it does not have to go to a public vote.
So then my next question is, what's the incentive for Gallatin County to go for this? Because I see that first they're not going to get more revenue, and then you imply at the end that all the revenue that they're getting from this area goes away from them. So I see no reason for them to say this is a great deal for them when most of the revenue comes from this area.
Yeah, so this, I'm leaning over here to look at that. After the 15 years or wherever the district sunsets, the value that was in the increment, so the taxable value that is above the base taxable value, is treated as newly taxable. So that gets to go onto the tax rolls at the end of the district, is the general benefit for all of these TIF districts. The county budgets are constrained by what they call mill cap. It's a revenue cap. You can only increase your county budget by the rate of inflation or 4%, whatever's bigger. They just changed that last legislative session. Plus newly taxable. So anything that's newly developed, you can increase your budget to serve that. That's called the large windfall at the back, is all newly taxable. So you hold your mill levy at the base for 15 years, and then you get to claim that all as newly taxable. And the idea is that a lot or all of that newly taxable value wouldn't be there to begin with, but for the district. You need this infrastructure to produce that taxable value. So it's getting to claim something that you wouldn't have had the chance to otherwise.
All right, hey, I'm speaking because my attack dog wants to speak, and and I think maybe I can do it a little more diplomatically. In terms of fire-wise and the wildfire protection, remember how much money Big Sky is worth to Montana and to the counties. And it's not just a question of knowing when the fire's coming, but being ready for a fire. And that's going to cost us some money. Every one of us right now can save your house if you spend some money on mitigating the space around it. But we need some more money because not everybody can do it. And we need to have some grants and matching funds to be able to do that. So it's not just saving lives, it's saving property, because if we lose the property, Big Sky's useless to the state of Montana. And they're going to lose a lot of money.
Just to echo a little bit of that, we just developed a new website with all of that information for anybody that wants it, bigskywildfire.org, with many community partners, and so please check that out.
I'm coming for you.
So I just want to clarify the structure again. We have a base level of the taxes that makes up that 27%, I think you said, and 50% respective for each county, that we send to the county. We can only use the incremental increase in value and the associated tax available to us after we establish that baseline. So to your point of building a pool of money, we don't get anything from that 27 and 50% that we're already sending. We only get if our property taxes increase enough to start building a pool. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily your individual property taxes. It's also generated from new construction, newly taxable. So new development also kicks into that. So you'll freeze a base, and then any natural attrition of the existing property taxes above that base, plus the newly taxable that would have been added or not have added if there wasn't for this infrastructure. That is what contributes to the increment.
So the valuation, though, that we're talking about getting incremental from could be a couple years down the road.
Yeah, I think, Jackie, when EPS did their projections, I think in the first 5 years, they were thinking like $15 million or something. Like, I can't remember what it was, but it's really slow on the front end. And then because of the, John knows, he's got a spreadsheet back there. But generally speaking, the majority of the funding comes in the latter half. But that really works well with construction projects because the engineering and the designing and stuff like that, if you don't have it already designed, comes first. And then you build that, and the goal of the comprehensive development plan is really targeted. It's get in, get what you need done, and get out.
I'm really glad this conversation's happening. What's important to remember is that if we establish the district and we have confidence that TIF revenue will come in in 5 to 6 years, it unlocks other types of capital, like resort tax, for example. We know that the Gallatin Canyon Sewer District cannot be covered by resort tax alone. We just can't do it with our 1% rules and what's happening with the cold smoke bonds. But if we know that there's TIF revenue coming in 5 or 6 years, that might be enough to kickstart a project and start getting first money in. TIF revenue in that example could be theoretically last money in. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to wait for the increment to complete. There's a little bit of risk to that, but we are having this conversation with commissioners right now to say, if we have assurances, there might be a way to tackle these projects. Thanks.
Yeah, the capital stack for these projects is usually huge. I mean, there's the list that we had on there of all places that you can get funding for infrastructure currently in Big Sky. There were 7 or 8 of them on the list, and usually an infrastructure project has all of those in some form or fashion. Like, the cost of completing infrastructure projects is so high anymore that you really have to get creative and pull from everywhere that you can.
Given the continued escalation in the cost of everything in Big Sky, especially building, what have we assumed the increase in the cost to do any of these infrastructure projects will be, and what's the basis of the last 10 years on that percentage increase that's happened? I mean, if it's going to take us 5 years to get any money, and it's on the back end, is the cost to build any of these infrastructure projects going to outpace the amount of money we're going to get?
That's a really good question. From the Water and Sewer District's perspective, we've started tying our costing to the year we anticipate the construction project happening, no longer just putting it in today's dollars. So while that time frame could change by a couple of years, we're at least estimating an inflationary cost based on today's dollars. If a project's not likely to be needed until 2032, we're building that inflation into that cost. All we can do is base on what we've seen historically, and obviously the last few years have been pretty dramatic, but we're factoring into those numbers as we work through our projections for the next 10 years.
And the $100 million number that Jackie mentioned was a net present value number. It's 180 or something. The economists use a discount rate that they determine with some kind of magic that I don't understand, but that was today's dollars.
Hi, my name is Holly Coltea. I'm the Executive Director of the Big Sky Owners Association, and as I see a few folks starting to leave, I just wanted to quickly get up here and say that we are one of your co-hosts tonight because the Big Sky Owners Association feels so strongly how important this is for our community, and we have a big story to tell. In my opinion, Greg, I think you were the first person that alluded to this, but I feel that the post-TIF taxable value is what's good for the goose is essentially good for the gander. So as we build up Big Sky and our infrastructure, ultimately that will be good for our counties because that higher increase of our taxable value will then ultimately go to all of the taxing entities across the counties in the state. And so as folks are leaving, it is really important that we as a community tell a story. And everybody here is representing a different entity tonight. I'm a homeowner, I'm a parent, I'm a worker, and I have a lot of hats to wear, all of which I can tell to the county commissioners. And as Jackie and Megan and everyone up here tonight has said, this is a ballot initiative, this is not a vote. This is not a ballot initiative. This is a county commissioner vote. And so within each county, we need 2 of the 3 commissioners, right, John? 2 of the 3 commissioners to vote for this. Megan, Jackie, Danny, John, Brad, Tom, there's a group of us that have been working together since January of this year. And I have put together about 60 different templates representing all of the different voices in our community, everywhere from a family to a nonprofit to someone who cares deeply about our water to wildfire preparedness. There are folders up here with each topic, and within each folder there are 4 different templates. And before you leave, and I don't want to interrupt what's going on right now, but before you leave, I just ask that you consider sharing your voice, because this is a community-wide story that we have to tell. And we finally have all the parts and players at the table. And I think I can speak, though I'm a newcomer to Big Sky within the last decade, I think I can speak that this is the greatest momentum that we have had for this TED-TIF initiative. So I just want to make sure that we get your signature on a letter before you leave. And thank you on behalf of all of us for coming tonight.
Do we have any other questions before we wrap?
What type of communication have you had with the 6 commissioners to date?
The question was, what type of communication have we had with the 6 commissioners to date?
We have had ongoing communication with commissioners on both sides. Nearly weekly meetings with the Gallatin County Commissioners for the last month, and multiple meetings with the Madison County Commissioners, and we intend to continue that through their vote. So we are really in regular communication with the commissioners.
What their votes might be?
Is there any indication on what their votes might be? The county commissioners have been very upfront and honest with us about their concerns, the things that they've heard from the public. We have really actively taken that feedback and incorporated solutions into our project planning and into our discussions around that. And so, while we could maybe predict when it comes down to the vote, sometimes you don't know, but we are very actively hearing concerns and very actively working towards solutions and having that conversation.
That's good.
My question is on politics too. I think most Americans hate them these days. I certainly fit that. We live in a 51-49 world. Maybe we live in a 60-40 world here. I think this community does a great job of trying to take care of people of all economic means to make this a better place for all of us to be able to live. When I look at this project list, water, transportation, and wildfire mitigation, that's not a rich people list of projects. That's tourism and industry, and tourism is the #1 industry of the state of Montana now. I don't know what the attendance level is of the West Yellowstone entrance today versus 2020 versus 2015, but it's got to be double or triple or quadruple. 191 is largely a feeder for that, and yet I don't feel like we're getting any help federally or even in the state to prioritize taking care of the economic engine that's Big Sky, because it's politically unpopular. It's politically unpopular because it looks like you're trying to take care of a 1% class kind of set of problems, and that's not the case. It's make this a place that can sustain itself and survive. What can we do to get more politically louder with the state first? I mean, forget Washington. Just with the state, you would think this economic engine would be something that would be very much a priority, and I don't feel like it is.
That's a great question.
Spoken as one person.
We as a community are actively working on that. Brad, do you want to talk about the FAM tours? I'm putting Brad on the spot, but Brad is gonna talk about that question and Pam tours.
Hi, my name's Brad Knight. I run the Chamber of Commerce in Visit Big Sky, and one of the things I think we've noticed over the last 5 years is our voice was not being heard. There's also an opinion of what Big Sky was about, and I think it goes back to 3 sessions ago when Kevin Germain stood up representing Big Sky and in a committee, and one of the representatives on the committee said, you know, Big Sky has more money than the U.S. government. Why are you guys here asking for our money? And I think we all walked away going, our money? Hold on, whose money are you talking about? And we really kind of had to change the whole narrative in the fact that we need to reapply Big Sky, that no one else should be telling our story except us. And then the second thing is that we are a normal Montana town with 3,500 residents that have school teachers and firefighters and nurses, and we are that. It's not Tom Brady and Justin, whatever his name is. They don't pave our roads, and they don't apply money. There's no philanthropy for water and sewer. And so we started a model that we use in tourism called a FAM tour. It's called a familiarization. We used to use it with travel writers and group tour operators. And we said, what about we do that for our legislators? And so in October will be our 4th group of legislators that'll come. We will have about 15 legislators. Back in, when was the last one? May, we had 12 legislators. Last year we had 12 legislators. So our goal is when we go into the next legislative session, January 1st, we will have close to 50 legislators that come to Big Sky. And when they're here, we keep them for 24 hours, and it's all about education. And the whole thing is telling the Big Sky story, talking about how we are a community that does not ask for a hand out, we ask for a hand up. And that we are here to solve our own problems, but we just want you to understand it. We also want 50 people in Helena to actually, like, you know, Big Sky, have you been there? Those guys actually know what they're doing. And we want them to be proud of Big Sky, that we are an economic engine for the state, and we are a leader in so many different things. We're leading in housing, we're leading in water, we're leading in community building, and then we're making things happen. So this stuff does not happen like that. It takes a long runway to make that happen, but Big Sky has been very active. And I'd say, at least on a political standpoint, Big Sky has changed the narrative over the last 3 years of who we are, and we have a real policy now showing up and being in the room, because we used to let other people tell our story. And if there's a meeting, there was just a meeting, 2 weeks ago in Bozeman for an economic development. We had 12 people from Big Sky in the room. We have another event coming up, we're in the room. We're just gonna keep hammering it until we get a change. And I think we're starting to see it, so I'll leave it at that.
And it's been neat. We showed them all the boring normal people stuff, you know, like the water sewer district and the collaboration, and the result is the legislators walk away and say, wow, they're, you know, the community of Big Sky is trying to solve their own problems, and they realize that we're saying just help us. And if you're curious, you could go look up Senator Fern's letter to the editor that he wrote after his last visit here. He's the senator from the Whitefish area, and he has a few resort tax communities in his district. And he was like, wow, really cool. So if you're kind of a political nerd, you can go look up Senator Fern's letter to the editor. So.
Okay. One more question. One more question for Carol.
So what happens if this passes in one county and doesn't in the other county?
That's a good question, and I guess you can see what happens from there. One thing to note with that is the enabling legislation does allow for TIF funds to be used for connecting infrastructure, so you can, in some circumstances, use the money outside of the district if you're connecting the district to existing infrastructure. Oh, sorry. Did you get that? You want me to repeat that? You can use it for connecting infrastructure, so it completely changes the estimates and things like that with how much, but it's a tool, another tool in the toolbox, and no matter what form it is, it's going to be helpful, right?
I think that was a great one to end on for this evening. This is
a huge project, a huge effort has gone into this, and I imagine that as you guys process some of the information and the questions that we heard tonight, you'll probably have some more. So I just want you to know that we are here and available. We have another one of these information sessions coming up on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. at the Arts Council. So if you want to do it all over again, come and see us. This time we'll have coffee instead of cocktails. But with that, please grab a snack on your way out. And before you leave, please visit Cassie and myself and Holly. We're going to be back at that table with the letters of support. We can't reiterate that enough, that we need your support brought to the county commissioners. And we're hoping to stack that information packet that we're delivering in the beginning of September full of letters. I think we have about 35-ish so far. And the goal is to double that tonight, so please help us out with that.